In this second part of our 5-part video series on Microsoft SQL Server databases, we are looking at how to set up Microsoft SQL Server Replication. In order to do so, we are looking at the graphical user interface. If I click on the Edit button, I see some of the fields a bit more highlighted. So we have been setting up a primary system and a secondary system. They are set up and configured as host names, so we are using the host name to communicate to the system. Could be the IP address as well. The instance is the same on source and secondary system. Only the database name on the production system, we have the SID as WM1, and we keep the secondary system with a different SID in order to always distinguish between production and standby database. Only when we switch over, we activate the database as WM1 as it was on the production and primary system. We need to know where Microsoft MS SQL Server is installed on primary and secondary system. And then finally we need to know where we can place and or where we find the backup of the transaction logs on the production environment and on the secondary system. With the show DB files, we make a connection to the database, and we are looking at a currently 52 gigabyte database, which is already up and running, holding an SAP system, and is already set up to replicate to the secondary system. The main parameters we can define are copy, archiver, recover, and structure processes. Now let's start with the copy options. The copy is the initial synchronization method between a primary system and a secondary system. We can set this up with either backup and restore files, meaning we are creating a standard database backup, copy it to the secondary system, and there we create a restore. Or instead of doing 3 steps one at a time, we do a backup pipe that we pipe these 3 steps directly to the target system in one process. We want to check the mirror environment, and we also want to start archiving and recovering immediately after copy. We want to do the file transfer compressed. We can also activate a high compression or copy everything with an uncompressed mode, which is probably going to take a bit longer. And we also want to create all directories required on the mirror system. After this copy process is done, we are looking at archiving, and we can check on how often we should switch log files, which means how often should we create a backup of the transaction log and copy it to the mirror system. Can be any value recommended. I wouldn't go lower than 1 or 2 minutes, and I wouldn't go higher than 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes depending on the environment. We want to copy it to the standby system. Since this is a test environment, I immediately delete files after I'm done copying them. And I can also, if I like to, set up multiple copy processes to get a better performance over the network. Next, we are setting up recovery, and here we define what we call a time delay. So log files are copied immediately to the mirror server, but on the mirror server they have to age for a certain period of time before they are applied into the mirror database. On the mirror system itself, again, we would delete log files after we recover them into the database. So we simply don't want to have a lot of logs sitting there on a continuous basis, either on the production system and the mirror system. Otherwise, somebody has to go in and clean them up manually. Structure process is checking the environment and the structure of the database. If there are any changes, they are updated on the mirror system. Mappings would either be a directory mapping or a user mapping, that you have different drive or directory structures between the two systems. And then finally the alarming scenario, which is email notification, writing Windows events or SNMP, and finally the network cards. I skipped over the flat files. We usually set up the flat file replication, which is everything for non-database files, as a separate configuration, and we're going to do a separate video on how the flat file replication is working. With this up and running and configured, we can look at the environment, and we're going to do this in the next video.